Welcome to the Old Lumens channel again. Today I have a video review of a Uniquefire UF-X6S. Okay, I got this light from Lights Castle. They sent it to me for review. It is a light that takes two 18650s, and it has an XML, not an XML2, but an XML, and a deep reflector. I thought maybe it would throw fairly well. Looks like it has a glass lens. It's a gray anodized finish. I'm just going to talk about overall fit and finish a little bit first, and then we'll talk about specs. The finish is done fairly well, but I do see quite a little bit of minor damage. Nothing major, but there are a lot of little nicks and dings on this light, which to me is typical of lights that come from China. I mean, I hate to say that, but a lot of the lights, unless you get into really expensive stuff, it seems is sort of a crapshoot is what you get for finish. It really is a sort of a nice looking light. I like the appeal of the looks to it, but it really does detract from it with the fact that there's a lot of nicks and dings. I think that most of that is from the way they handle their lights, or the parts as they're made. They're just doing bulk in bulk bins, and then of course they hit each other and get marks and dings on them. This light has an extension tube on it to take the two 18650, and one thing about it is that of course here's your first tube and here's your extension, and they look totally different. That may look okay for some people. It doesn't really look okay for me. I think from the coloration, see the rest of the light is sort of a light gray, and then now I get a darker gray with a shinier finish, and light gray again on the tail cap. So most likely the extensions were done at a different time, so that your finish doesn't match. So the finish does not match on it all the way across. It's, like I say, a light gray, now dark and shiny, and light gray again. So that's not necessarily all that appealing. What I found on all the threads was that I didn't notice really any grease, but they were pretty silent. They weren't squeaky. I don't feel any grease at all in it, and they are not square cut threads, and they are rough. I can feel with my finger that they're rough on the edges. Okay. Same with the inside threads, the interior threads, female threads. Now the tail cap itself, I greased it because it was a little bit noisy when you took it apart, and I thought it was interesting that there was a double O-ring for the tail cap. That you would think that was a positive, and I think it is, but one problem with it is that because the threads in the tail cap are down in so far, when you go to put the tail cap on, you hit the first O-ring, and it's hard to get the tail cap seated. It would be better if that first O-ring actually wasn't there when you wanted to get the tail cap screwed on. It helps you turn it the other way. I think that's a lot easier on putting the tail cap on. Okay, but the idea of a double O-ring is nice. It's just I think they should have probably been more, towards this end than the other way around. But anyways, the double O-ring on the tail cap. The threads again are the same there. They're rough, they're coarse threads, not finished off, or not cut well actually. Same with the front threads for the head. Same way, very rough you definitely have to give some do some lubrication on these. And what I usually do is take some fine steel wool. I use 4/0 steel wool and just rub the threads to take this roughness out of them. It helps, but then it also makes them a little bit looser in the long run. But it does help when they screw out and screw in. As I said, this head here has an XML in it. I would imagine T6 and a deep polished reflector. Glass lens looks to be, might be a coating on it. Might possibly be a coating on it. And right now, I can tell you, I'm not able to take any of this apart. The body, or in the head, there's two sections here where the driver is, and then the rest of it, and that doesn't want to come apart. And the bezel doesn't want to come apart either. So at the moment, I'm not going to take these apart for this part of the video. I'm going to go ahead and strip it all down, and then I'll talk about the rest of it. Overall, if I had to say fit and finish, you know, I would just say, hey, you know, it's about average for what I see in lights in this price range. Uniquefire, and anything with fire on it, it seems, you know, is sort of just your basic light, you know. Not bad looking, and the idea of 218-650 is okay, but not really something that's wonderful, fantastic. Now, you can use this, you could use this with a single 18650, but your tail cap's not going to screw on very far. I've tested it with a single 18650, but so you don't get hardly any, and again, we're right there, you only get about a turn on the tail cap, but it does work that way. You can use it as a shorty. The driver has to be a buck driver because with two cells, it's got a higher voltage than you would need for an XML. So it has to be a buck driver, and it will run on one cell, and it runs the same amperage on one cell or two cells. So there's you know, there's the option there that you could put it together with just one cell and make a shorty. But like I say, you only get about one thread screwed back on. Probably not enough, you know. All right, anyway, so as far as amp draw on this, I get, with two batteries, I get 0.86, 0.52, and 0.26. With one battery, I get 1.77, 1.07, and 0.52. So basically, you know, you're getting the same amperage whether you use two batteries or one, because when two batteries, you have to double what you read, okay? So on a high, you only get 1.77 amps. That's to me, that's severely underdriven. Okay, it does have the typical XML spot for a thrower, but it has, to me, it has too much spill, and that's the deep reflector. If this reflector was shallower than it was, the spot would be a little bit tighter, and there'd be less spill. I think some might disagree with that, but deep reflectors to me, give too much spill. Okay, well, my video is shut off, so I'll try it again here. As I say, the deep reflectors, I think, give too much spill. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and tear this apart and talk about the different components in this, because, you know, as far as my reviews, I'm, you know, more about modding. So I want to talk a little bit about the possibilities of modding with this. One more thing I'll talk about this is my batteries are not protected batteries. And right now, with one cell or two cells in it, the batteries are all the way flush to the end. Okay, so I don't know if you could use protected cells in this thing. There's a spring in the front. Maybe you could get away with it, but even with all the way down, it's going to be a real tight fit to use protected cells in here right now. If that spring were removed and just use a, you know, just a little like a brass disc in the end or something, or copper disc in the end without the spring, then you'd probably have the length, because you still have a spring in the tail cap. The tail cap is a normal clicky tail cap. has a spring in there with a brass cup over top of it. So I mean, you still got spring tension in there, and you could remove the front spring maybe and run your protected cells. All right, I'm going to go ahead and tear this thing apart, and we'll get back to it. Okay, welcome back again. Let's get back after this. I got it torn apart. There was nothing that was glued. The bezel was on. The bezel was on very tight, but with a strap wrench it came apart. The pill is removable, but it's got reverse threads, so you have to turn it backwards to get it out. Okay, in other words, turn it like you were going to turn it in, and it comes out. It's got reverse threads on it. I'll give you some dimensions here. The bezel measures an OD of 58.2 millimeter. It has an O-ring seal that goes above the lens. The lens is a glass lens that has been coated. It's not AR coating, it's just a plain coating. The lens measures 52.6 millimeters in diameter. And as far as thickness, about 1.5 millimeter, probably 1 to 1.5. The reflector is an aluminum reflector, polished finish, and it's pretty good looking, pretty nice looking. I also like the fact, you can see here, the reflector cones right down to the LED star surface instead of being a big flat surface. So from a mounting standpoint, it would be a lot easier to do something like an MTG2 in here. The reflector measures 52.5 millimeter OD, 47 millimeter in depth, and it has a 10 millimeter hole in the center. Okay. The star is a 25 millimeter star. It has a plastic locator around the XML. Notice the XML is damaged, the dome is damaged. See, like I say, again, mass production. They throw all these into bins. When they go to do them, the domes are all damaged. They don't keep them in the original packaging before they put them on the stars. Anymore, when I get a light, as far as I'm concerned, the stock XML, it's going to be a throwaway. That's it. Very simple. It's going to be a throwaway. I'm not going to use it. But it's aluminum star, 25 millimeter, about 1.5 millimeters thick. There was no thermal paste in there. I'll show you the pill here. There's my thermal paste. It's right over here. And you can see, it wasn't even touching the back of the star. Well, it was right there, a little tiny bit. That's ridiculous. And there's a hole in the center of the shelf. Makes I don't know why. I don't know. When you look at the underside, and I don't believe you'll be able to see it, but it's really messy inside there. It's a real bad cut job, and I don't know what the hole's for. And it's not even perfectly centered, it's off-centered, but that means the LED star is not going to transfer heat worth of crap to the rest of the light. Now, the idea of the pill being screwed into the head, that's fine. I mean, you can give a nice tight fit that way. That's no problem. But this is very thin, and it has no mass to it at all. It's going to be a lot of rework, or actually a change of pills, to be able to really do much of anything with this. Okay, from the standard point of view, the way it is stock, I can see why it's only 1.77 amps, because it sure wouldn't take any more than that, especially with that hole right in the center. That's a bad thing. As I say, this is reverse thread. It will take a 25 millimeter star. That's an oddball size star. The driver is 22.6. The driver hole, okay, the recess for the driver is 22.65 millimeter. That's an oddball, okay. The depth in there is 21 millimeter for the amount of room you have, if you had to put a tall driver in there, and it does have a fairly tall driver in there, okay. But again, it's just, anyways. The head's fine. It's anodized both inside and out. It's done really well. The threads are much better. You know, the 2 sections of the head. I said it was in 2 sections. The threads are much better done right there than they are anywhere else. Probably because they're anodized. The driver, I can't tell you a lot about it because I'm not a driver guy. I really believe this has got to be a buck driver. I don't think, I mean, there's nothing else it really could be if you're driving 2 cells with 1 LED, but that's what I think it is. And like I said, I can't tell you an awful lot about it. It's a funky looking driver. I can't say that I've seen this driver before, and it's not something that I would mess with at this point. If I were to mod this thing, I would definitely have to redo the pill. Most likely, I would just go ahead and remove the shelf that's in here and just put in a solid chunk of copper or aluminum in there and use a different driver, As it is in stock form, I think it's probably okay, being as the fact that it only runs 1.77 amps on high. But that makes it sort of a mediocre thrower and just an average all-around light. It's okay, not bad, but not great either. Like I say, if it would have to have some mod work done to it, I would also probably go back to a single battery, single 18650, make a shorty out of it, remove a little material from here so that the tail cap would get maybe 2-3 threads down to hold it a little better, and I'd just go with a shorty on it. But that's about it. I mean, like I say, my reviews are more prone towards modding than they are anything else. Overall, it's not a bad light necessarily. It's not a fantastic light. It's just sort of a mediocre, another mediocre light from China. I hate to say that, but anymore, I'm just getting to the point where, these lights are all about the same. As they're not super well made. They're inexpensive, but hey, I mean, let's start, dropping the mass production thing and trying to add a little more quality into it. That's all I really am about. So, anyways, that's it for my review. Thanks for watching.